Passengers were laughing, sleeping, and sipping coffee, until the captain's trembling voice echoed through the plane. "Is there any fighter pilot on board?" Panic spread instantly, and that's when a quiet black woman in seat 17A stood up and changed everything. The cabin lights dimmed, casting a soft golden glow across the rows of tired passengers. The rhythmic hum of the engines filled the silence as the massive aircraft glided through the night sky, bound for Dublin. Among the travelers sat Maya Brooks, a 32-year-old black woman wearing a gray hoodie, ripped jeans, and a pair of worn sneakers. Her head rested against the window, the reflection of moonlight glimmering in her tired eyes. To everyone around her, she was just another passenger, calm, quiet, maybe a little exhausted from a long day. But behind that peaceful expression lay a past few could imagine. Maya wasn't just any traveler. She was a former U.S. Air Force fighter pilot, one of the youngest women ever to command a combat jet. For years, she had flown through storms, dogfights, and near-death missions with nerves of steel. Yet the one thing she couldn't fly away from was her own grief. 3 years earlier, during a routine mission overseas, she had lost her best friend, Lieutenant Carlos Dean, in a fiery crash she couldn't prevent. The guilt haunted her every night. She'd promised herself she was done with the skies. She sold her medals, turned down offers to instruct, and decided to live quietly, far away from cockpits, commands, and control towers. This flight to Dublin was supposed to be her escape, a new beginning, a chance to finally let go. As the plane climbed higher through layers of glowing clouds, Maya slipped on her headphones, closed her eyes, and let herself drift. The soft hum of the engines became a lullaby. She didn't even notice the subtle flicker of the cabin lights, or the faint vibration running under the floor. Until, bang, a violent jolt rocked the aircraft. The overhead bins rattled, and a collective gasp swept through the passengers. Then came a drop. The plane plunged sharply downward for a split second before jerking back up, causing drinks to spill, bags to fall, and terrified screams to erupt across the cabin. Oxygen masks shot from the ceiling like white serpents. People clawed at them in panic. A baby wailed somewhere in the back. Maya's eyes snapped open. Instinct replaced sleep. She ripped off her headphones, scanning her surroundings as pure chaos unfolded. The intercom crackled. A trembling voice came through, the captain's. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're experiencing an emergency situation. Please remain calm. If anyone on board has aviation or flight experience, please alert a member of the cabin crew immediately." The words echoed through the air like a siren. Maya's heart began to pound. She could feel the aircraft tilting to the left, an unnatural pull that sent drinks sliding off tray tables. The engines groaned as the plane struggled to stabilize. Passengers prayed aloud. One woman screamed, "We're going down." But Maya didn't move, not yet. She was calculating, listening, assessing. Years of combat instinct began to whisper in her mind. Something was wrong, seriously wrong. And though she'd sworn she'd never step into a cockpit again, fate was about to give her no choice. Inside the cockpit, chaos ruled. The control yokes shuddered violently, alarms wailed, and red lights flashed across the instrument panels like warning sirens in a war zone. Both pilots, veterans of thousands of hours of flight time, were locked in a desperate struggle to keep the aircraft from rolling. "Left hydraulic pressure's gone completely," the co-pilot shouted, gripping the control column with both hands. Sweat poured down his face, his knuckles white. "Try the backup," the captain barked. "I already did. It's not responding." The captain's face turned pale. Hydraulic failure. The one nightmare every pilot feared. Without it, the aircraft lost its primary system of control. The elevators, rudders, and ailerons, the vital muscles of the plane, were dead weight. He slammed the radio switch. "Mayday, mayday, mayday. Flight 207, experiencing hydraulic failure. We are over the Atlantic Ocean, requesting immediate assistance." Static, then silence. They were too far from a nearest air traffic control tower for real-time help. The captain looked at his trembling hands. If we don't stabilize her soon, she's going to spiral. The co-pilot's voice cracked. At this altitude, that's a death sentence. There was a pause, the kind that hangs heavy in the air right before panic sets in. Then, quietly, the captain whispered, "Make the announcement." The co-pilot hesitated. "You think anyone on board could possibly—" "Do it," the captain interrupted. "Maybe we get lucky." The co-pilot grabbed the mic, his voice shaky but urgent. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your flight crew speaking. We are experiencing a serious mechanical failure. If there is anyone on board with aviation or fighter pilot experience, please make yourself known to a flight attendant immediately." Those words, fighter pilot experience, echoed through every corner of the plane like a thunderclap. In the cabin, the air thickened with fear. Passengers exchanged confused, terrified glances. Whispered prayers filled the silence between gasps. A businessman clutched his seat arm and muttered, half joking, half serious, "What do they expect? Tom Cruise from Top Gun to be sitting back here." A nervous laugh escaped someone nearby, but it quickly died as the plane tilted again, pitching to the right this time. Drinks spilled, a baby screamed, an oxygen mask swung violently above them. Then a subtle shift. Near the middle rows, a woman slowly stood up. Calm, composed, her face steady, eyes sharp. Maya. The flight attendant closest to her blinked in disbelief. "Ma'am, please stay seated," she said, her voice trembling. But Maya's tone was firm, commanding, the kind of voice that instantly quiets chaos. "I'm a pilot," she said. U.S. Air Force, retired. "Take me to the cockpit." The attendant froze, scanning her face. Something in Maya's gaze, the confidence, the focus, told her this woman wasn't bluffing. Without another word, the attendant grabbed the intercom and spoke softly into it. "Cockpit, this is front cabin. We might have someone." The cockpit door unlocked with a mechanical click. As Maya walked down the aisle, the plane rocked again, turbulence tossing luggage from overhead bins. Passengers stared at her, some with hope, others with disbelief. Who was this woman who could walk so calmly through panic? And as the door closed behind her, the murmurs faded into silence. For the first time since the emergency began, there was a spark of hope. Maya walked calmly down the aisle, her footsteps steady despite the chaos around her. The plane shuddered violently, but her expression didn't change. Passengers turned their heads as she passed, whispering, praying, clinging to hope. Her voice cut through the panic like a blade through fog. "I'm a pilot," she said. "United States Air Force, retired." "What's the situation?" For a moment, the flight attendants froze, unsure if they'd heard her right. Then the head attendant, a middle-aged woman with trembling hands, nodded quickly. "Follow me," she said, her voice quivering but full of faith. As they hurried toward the cockpit, the sound of alarms and crying passengers faded behind them. Every second felt stretched thin, time itself holding its breath. When the door to the cockpit opened, Maya stepped into a world of blinking lights and chaos. The air was thick with tension, radios crackled uselessly, and both pilots looked like they were seconds from losing control. The captain turned, sweat glistening on his forehead. "Who are you?" "Maya Brooks," she said firmly. "Former U.S. Air Force, F-16 pilot." "What's your situation?" The co-pilot gestured to the instruments, his voice shaking. "The right hydraulic system's gone. We've lost yaw control, partial elevator, and rudder response. It's like flying with one wing." Maya slid into the jump seat, eyes scanning the panels. To anyone else, the controls would have looked like chaos. But to her, it was a puzzle she'd solved 100 times before in training and in combat. Her heartbeat slowed, her breathing steadied, every sense sharpened. "Okay," she said quietly. "Listen to me. We're not going down today." The captain nodded, deferring instinctively to her tone. In that moment, she wasn't a passenger anymore. She was command. "Switch to manual redundancy," Maya ordered. "We'll reroute control through the alternate pressure lines. Reduce throttle on the right engine. We'll balance her manually." The pilots moved fast, following her directions without hesitation. She adjusted knobs, flipped switches, and recalibrated the trim controls, her fingers gliding across the panels like a pianist on familiar keys. The plane still trembled, but the wild jerks began to smooth out. The nose leveled slightly. The vibration eased. The captain's eyes widened. It's stabilizing. Maya nodded, her focus unbroken. Not perfect, but we've got control. Partial, but enough to work with. For the first time since the crisis began, a flicker of relief filled the cockpit. The co-pilot exhaled shakily. "Ma'am, how are you doing this?" Maya didn't look up from the instruments. "Because I've been here before," she said softly. Different plane, same fear. For a moment, the cabin was quiet except for the hum of the engines. Outside, the Atlantic stretched endlessly beneath them, dark, merciless, waiting. Maya adjusted the heading, glancing at the radar. Set course for Dublin International. We're bringing her home. The captain gave a tight smile. "Yes, ma'am." And for the first time in hours, the aircraft held steady, not safe yet, but alive. For the next 45 minutes, the cabin became a battleground, not of weapons, but of willpower and skill. Maya sat in the cockpit, headset on, eyes locked on the flight instruments as she spoke with air traffic control over the static-filled radio. Her calm, precise tone was a sharp contrast to the chaos that had nearly consumed the flight an hour earlier. "Control, this is Flight 207. Hydraulic failure on right system. Limited control authority. Requesting emergency landing clearance, Dublin International." The response came through bursts of static. "Flight 207, Dublin Tower copies. You are clear for emergency approach. Runway 28 mev. Ground units are standing by." "Copy that," Maya replied. "We'll see you soon." She turned to the captain. "We're going to need every inch of that runway." Outside, lightning flickered across the dark sky, illuminating the massive wings as sheets of rain pounded against the fuselage. The wind howled, pushing the aircraft from side to side like a toy boat in a storm. Back in the cabin, passengers clung to their seats. But when Maya's voice came over the intercom again, everything changed. "This is Maya Brooks," she said steadily. "I'm a pilot assisting your crew. We've had a mechanical failure, but I assure you, we are going to land safely. Stay calm, stay seated, and trust us." Her voice carried a quiet confidence, firm, warm, unbreakable. It was the voice of someone who knew what she was doing. The crying softened. The murmurs faded. People looked at one another with new hope. A mother held her child close, whispering, "Did you hear her? We're going to be okay." Even the flight attendants straightened their shoulders, their fear replaced by determination. In the cockpit, the co-pilot looked at the radar, his hands trembling. "Crosswind at 40 knots, he warned. "That's brutal." Maya glanced out of the flashing storm clouds and smiled faintly. "I've landed fighter jets and worse." She gripped the yoke with steady hands, guiding the plane as if it were an old friend. Every bump, every gust, she anticipated it before it came. The engines roared against the wind as the coastline of Ireland glimmered faintly below, lights flickering like stars through the storm. "Landing gear down," she commanded. The co-pilot flipped the switch. The deep metallic thud of the gear deploying echoed through the fuselage. The runway lights appeared ahead, two glowing lines in the rain. "Come on, baby," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. "You're going to make it." The aircraft lurched again. The wind slammed against its side, pushing it off alignment. Maya corrected instantly, applying manual rudder trim with a precision that only years in a cockpit could give. "Hold her steady," the captain muttered. Maya didn't answer. Her focus was absolute. The altimeter ticked down, 500 feet, 300, 200. The rain blurred everything outside, but Maya never blinked. At 100 feet, she eased the yoke back. The plane floated, kissed the runway, then bounced once hard. A groan rippled through the fuselage. Maya held firm, easing the throttle. And then, the wheels locked onto the ground. The plane roared forward, spraying water across the tarmac as reverse thrusters engaged. For a few seconds, no one breathed. Then the aircraft began to slow. 160 knots. 120. 80. 40. Finally, it stopped. The engines wound down. Silence filled the cabin. Maya closed her eyes and exhaled. They'd made it. The wheels screeched against the wet tarmac, a thunderous sound that cut through the roar of the storm. For a heart-stopping second, no one dared breathe. Then silence. The plane rolled to a gradual stop, the wipers beating rhythmically against the rain-slicked windshield. In the cabin, time seemed to freeze. People looked around, stunned, as if afraid to believe they were still alive. And then it happened. A single clap, then another, and another. Within seconds, the cabin erupted. Cheers, laughter, sobs of relief. Strangers embraced, tears streamed down faces, and even the toughest-looking passengers broke down, whispering prayers of gratitude. The flight attendants couldn't hold back their tears. One of them, the same woman who had guided Maya to the cockpit, stood at the front of the cabin, her hands over her mouth, eyes shining with awe. Back in the cockpit, Maya sat motionless for a moment. Her heart pounded hard against her chest, but her breathing was steady, controlled. She looked at the raindrops sliding down the windshield and smiled faintly. The senior captain turned to her, voice trembling with emotion. "You just saved over 200 lives," he said softly. "Who are you?" Maya unbuckled her seatbelt, stood up slowly, and gave a small, almost wistful smile. Just someone who thought she'd left the sky behind. As she stepped out of the cockpit, the entire cabin turned toward her. Passengers rose to their feet, applauding, cheering, crying. Some reached out to shake her hand. Others simply whispered, "Thank you." Phones flashed as people recorded the woman who had just pulled them back from the edge of death. But Maya didn't pause for the cameras. She didn't make a speech or bask in the applause. She simply nodded, her voice quiet and humble. "I did what anyone would do," she said softly. "I went home." When she stepped onto the rain-soaked tarmac, paramedics and reporters waited nearby. The smell of jet fuel hung in the air. Blue emergency lights flashed against the gray dawn sky. Maya looked up, feeling the rain hit her face, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel the weight of the past pressing down on her. She felt light, free. Weeks later, headlines across the world told her story. Former black fighter pilot saves 212 lives on transatlantic flight. The heroine in seat 17A. Calm in chaos. How one woman brought a plane home. Airlines offered her positions. Talk shows begged for interviews. Documentaries wanted her story. But Maya politely declined them all. Instead, she channeled her new fame into something greater. She founded a flight academy for young women, especially those from underprivileged backgrounds. Her goal wasn't fame or glory. It was to give others the wings she'd almost lost. Her students often asked, "Captain Brooks, were you ever scared that day?" She would smile and reply, "Of course." But courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about flying anyway. And from that day on, every time Maya looked up at the open sky, that endless blue canvas she once feared, she no longer saw loss. She saw hope. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful stories like this, and don't forget to turn on the bell. Your next favorite story drops soon.